I am not okay right now. Carl and I are speaking and working together. But me and both my guys are broken up for this month. Alex is in a bad state. I can't even get him to answer the phone so that I can check on my cats. But his parents are coming up because he's trying to work on his legal case. So I hope he's successful with that. I've told him, he doesn't have to leave. He can stay. Even if the three of us split up, we're still family. I still want to try and make money so that I can support him and get him some private counseling and stuff. I posted a video to YouTube earlier. I'll put a link in the comments where it's mostly about Alex, and then after I go through like the latest thing that he had sent me, and now it's angry. It's a look at what it's like of how someone that's in a PTSD state communicates, and of what it's like to be in a relationship like that and stuff. I think I touched on a few other things towards the end of the video. I was doing okay. I was doing okay this morning. I've been having sessions, like spiritual sessions, which are way more effective than anything else that I've done. I will say currently pinned to the top of my Facebook page is my full session, my full Akashic Tarot session with David Fox that I did a few days ago. He pulled cards and we talked about spiritual stuff, and it's really good. Carl watched it. He really enjoyed watching it. And then last night I did a discovery call with someone that I'm going to be seeing for spiritual mentoring to help me process trauma, my trauma and transgenerational trauma. And it was really nice. I think this person is going to be a really good friend. And then I have a new best friend. My new best friend, his name is Fred. We've been friends on TikTok for a while now. He's a 50-something-year-old gay man in Virginia. And we've been giving each other psychic advice for more than several months now, and interacted through TikTok. And then finally this week, we got to actually talk on the phone. We've got to talk on the phone a few times. It's been so nice. He's got some health stuff going on. I'm over here like, don't you dare dial me, man. Don't you dare dial me. Oh, I just, there's part of me that feels like, I always wanted a best friend that, I just have a really good feeling about him, because all the other people I thought were my best friends in my life, they would always disappear. It was always very, lack of communication and stuff like that. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay to outgrow friends. What's not okay is to ghost people, to give no explanation whatsoever for something, or to message someone and tell them that, to say something nice and then to sandwich, I had to either unfollow whatever your stuff because something bothered me. And then another nice thing, but not mention what bothered you. Like what was wrong? What could you not handle? You couldn't handle, what was it? Was it my spiritual stuff not matching up with your beliefs? Can you not handle the fact that I lost some weight and I'm now getting a lot of attention? Can you not handle my confidence? Can you not handle my directness, my honesty, my intensity, all of the things that make me me and that make me beautiful? It's friends like that just, make me like, I don't know if I want friends, but this the thing is I always wanted friends. I didn't know it. When I was a little kid, I didn't dream about my future husband. I dreamed about my best friend. I dreamed about having a best friend. And, that's why I've held on and worked so hard to make things work with Carl, because he was my best friend. He was my best friend. And then he checked out on me. And I knew that he was sick. I knew that something was wrong. I didn't know. I knew he was different. I knew I was different. I didn't know that we were autistic back then, but now that I do, it makes, now a lot of things make sense. But even then, there are things that he does, and it's just, like, he's very selfish. I'm not sure, I don't think he's a narcissist, but he has a few narcissistic tendencies. And he is controlling in his own way and very much a brat. It is only when I am upset, it's only when I'm upset that he's nice. I don't know why I have to explode or be in pain to bring the empathy out of him. My intuition is telling me that is something to do with autism, and I hope to figure it out, because in 2020, when God woke me up, God told me that I was an autistic savant, that I had figured out how to cure myself, and that I would help to cure others. Well, I have a pretty good idea of what it was that I did to push myself. And what that was that I went deep, 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 deep in my feelings and made myself feel really, really, really bad. I made myself feel so guilty. I made myself feel so, so, so guilty about certain behaviors or things I was and I wasn't doing. And I tried to inch and crawl my way out of those things. Some of the people that remember what I was like in undergrad, and even undergrad was better than I was at different times. When I was in undergrad, I had to, I dropped out of school partway through because I was failing so hard and I was struggling so hard. I thought it was just PTSD, and I had processing issues. I couldn't wake up in the morning and stuff like that. Now I know it's probably a combination of all those things, anxiety disorders and everything. And it's just like, I'm just too stupid. I'm not bright enough to be able to do this. So I just have to leave. Thankfully, I get bored really quick. And it was only a few months afterwards that I was enrolled in an online school. And that online school, working at my own pace, on my own time, allowed me to restore my confidence in myself, because I was making all A's and B's. I was doing good. I was enjoying what I was doing. I was able to work when I felt up to it and stuff, and it was really good for me. So I decided to go back to school. And then after undergrad, I got a job, and I feel bad. I was only there for a couple of months, and they fired one of my coworkers because I was outperforming him so much. I think I was like doing 5 times the work. Maybe they wouldn't have fired him if they had known that I was autistic, and that this was just like one of my special abilities, And because I was so good at things and I wanted to do things, I wanted responsibility. I wanted to learn all the things. I've always been very curious. I kept getting piled and piled and piled with work until I started having all kinds of health problems, and now know that I was experiencing autistic burnout. And when I left that job at Carl's, Carl had to beg me for a few months to leave because my health was getting so bad, which is why I'm so worried about him being burnt out, because I've been there. I thought that I'd be fine as soon as I wasn't there, maybe a month. I wasn't fine. I wasn't fine even a year afterwards. It was only maybe about 2 years after I left that my health kind of recovered. And then I was in this weird state where it was like I had these health conditions, and I didn't know if I could, if I thought I might be disabled, not just from the stress, but we discovered that I had pseudotumor cerebri, and it was pretty bad back then. Now we've kind of figured out how to manage it with periodic lumbar punctures. But my brain wasn't working. My brain will stop working for periods of time. and then it will work for in the past there was a pattern, long periods of time, depression, brain not working, trouble. Sometimes my comprehension ability is amazing, and sometimes I can look at the same paragraph and read it 10 times and not be able to paraphrase or regurgitate it because my brain just won't take it in. And I was really depressed for a long time because I never knew how long those periods were going to last. It's like, how am I supposed to function, like this? But I was in this transitional period, and so I decided I had wanted to go to grad school because I had wanted to teach. I had given up on that dream because my husband was married to his job, and I didn't think that we'd ever be able to relocate. And I knew there were only a couple of schools nearby, and they're only going to hire so many people, and they're only going to hire so many people that are students from those places. So there weren't many opportunities. And but when I went through that crash period after burning out from that job, I was like, well, I'll go back to grad school for me, just in case I ever get the opportunity to teach. So I'll have it, but also I'll go back for me, because I could see that there were things that I had not learned in my BFA that other students from other programs around the country knew. I could see that my skills were not as strong as theirs in some areas. And so I wanted to go back to fill in those gaps. And I wanted to go back to grad school as like a gift to myself, to give myself the opportunity to work on projects that I wanted to work on, dedicated time and mentorship and stuff through all that. I go back to grad school, and I think I did pretty well. There were times when I struggled a little bit, but overall I did really well. And then then the pandemic happened, and then after my COVID experience, I sank into a big pit of depression because of all of the attention and pressure and stuff from that. It wasn't necessarily attention, but there had been a lot of drama with my family, a lot of pressure for me to keep my mouth shut, to not talk about what my experience has been like. I had, one family member telling me I was possessed by the devil. I had other family members saying this or that, or don't talk about it because no one will ever hire you. And, just people were like, well, this isn't true, and blah, 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 because they're shallow. But I knew as an artist and as a storyteller that even, let's say my experiences weren't real or true in some way, which they were, but spiritual communication is often metaphorical and very personal. But other people don't understand that, and they get triggered, But my family tried to have the hospital take my devices away from me, even though live streaming each night in the hospital was like the only thing that kept me from losing my mind, that made me feel connected, because the nurses and stuff, they barely came into the room. They came in full hazmat, and I tried not to bother them because I knew that it was a scary time for everyone. And I was thankful that I was there and I could be of service to my community by sharing what it was like to be inside a hospital, to be a patient with COVID during the height of the pandemic. And I still think that story is really special. And then I had my PTSD episode, because the hospital I was staying in was the one that my mom worked at when my ex-stepfather would come over to the house. And then all of the spiritual stuff happened. I don't really know why I'm recounting all of this, except that, when God woke me up, he ripped an IV out of my arm to scare me awake. He told me that I was the second coming of Christ, that he wanted to show the world that he had a sense of humor, and what better way than to do that through an example by, what would be funnier? Just prove that God has a sense of humor than to make the second coming of Christ a fat white chick from Alabama, childless, addicted to video games, doesn't believe in labels, but like fits every single one of them, that believes in love and bi, I wasn't really poly then, but now I know that I've always been poly. It's not, like you're either capable of loving multiple people or you aren't, like that's how I feel about it, at least. Some of us have a lot of love inside of us. Some of us have a lot of love to give. Not everyone is that way. Akase ono koshiana. God told me lots of things in the hospital, some of which have come true. I've got recordings of a good chunk of it that hopefully one day I'll have the money to have a team to help me go through all of the things that I recorded and documented. I've been documenting as much of my spiritual stuff and my channeling stuff as I can for the past 5 years, because I know that seeing is believing and that evidence is what convinces people. Patterns. Thank God my special gift is pattern recognition. Sometimes I'm able to see patterns too clearly, like too many patterns. Like I can imagine so many different scenarios. And I have to remind myself that most people on this planet are very, very one-dimensional and linear. Anyways, my name is Carol Record, but I have many other names. Names like Lilith and Sophie. Names like Isis. Akaseonoa. I have lived many different lives. I've lived many, many lives as both a man and a woman. In my last life, I was a Spaniard, was a Spanish man, drafted into the military. But I really wanted to serve the church, and so I injured my hand so that I could get out of service and go join the church. In the first human life that I had, and I've had at least 150 human lives, because this is my favorite game. I was Confucius. And then during the time of Christ, I was a female disciple or apostle. I didn't speak much, but I listened. And I guess that's why I always felt so close. And the thing is that the second coming of Christ isn't just one person. The second coming of Christ is every single one of us waking up and stepping into Christ consciousness. Now, that being said, I am very special. And I know that I have some special jobs on this planet. My human relationships have been a big distraction from it, but it's okay, because apparently I needed all of this trauma in order to get me to actually share some of my truth, because the things that I have been told are so big. And because I believe them, I am Gaia. I am the void. Jehovah. Jehovah, help get me here. Oh. He wanted me to incarnate with him. And it took a long time for us both to be here at the same time.